Take your seat, settle in, and listen up. Gophers 101 is underway and in session. It's time to go to class and talk all things Gophers.
I'm pretty sure I'll giggle every time at that open. Thor, this is another edition of Gophers 101, the Thor edition. I do believe Thor, starting next week. I think we'll get to like Wednesdays for the most part. There may be a sliding scale where we have to adjust a little bit, but the beginning of the year with the Thursday game and then trying to come up with a good time to do, I don't know, kind of a recap preview show, it doesn't lend itself to a Thursday game. Friday, Saturday, we're okay, but we're working our way through it. We're going through our progressions. We're checking it down where we need to. We're holding on to the ball. We're being efficient here, pumping out these editions of Gophers 101.
I'm just getting coached up by you, Ross. I'm the Drake Lindsey to your PJ Fleck, so.
Well, look at you segue master. Maybe we just start right there. I would say not only did the Gophers, quote unquote, pass their first test, I think Drake Lindsey passed his first test as far as just looking the part and looking comfortable. 19 for 35, 290 yards, 2 touchdown passes, 1 fluke interception. That TD pass on the run to Jalen Smith was awesome, largely for the pocket presence, Thor, just to be able to step up, slide through the pocket. And oh, by the way, his numbers would have been a little bit better if the tight end didn't have a massive case of the dropsies in the second half, and the receivers didn't do him a ton of favors either. I think just dropping some passes that I think they would all say they should catch. But overall, I guess if you want to start with Drake Lindsey, Thor, I thought a really good night just when it comes to looking, and I don't want to understate his performance, but when it comes to just looking functional and looking the part as somebody who can potentially win you some Big Ten games, not just now, but in the future, really encouraged.
I agree with all that. And Drake Lindsey, I mean, this would have been a shock heading into the game, but you were sort of brushing on it. He looked better than his core of pass catchers, like on the night, holistically, they still have to figure out the pass catchers, and we can start hitting on that in a moment. But Lindsey looked pretty good. There was a couple plays in there. There was a couple YOLO, a couple didn't read the field well that we're going to have to clean up a little bit. But overall, he showed skill as a pocket passer. It was a different experience watching him for the first time than it was, say, 2 years ago with Ethan. You know, when we seen Ethan Kaliak-Manis for the first time, it's like, I don't know if this guy is it. Even the year before with Brosmer, Brosmer got better and better and better as the season went along. But in the opener against UNC, you know, it took a little bit longer for Brosmer. But I like what I saw of Drake Lindsey, mostly in the pocket. I thought he navigated that pretty well. We didn't see a ton of panic from him. Now, it was Buffalo, right? I mean, and that Buffalo team does not have Khalil Mack anymore. Some of those studs that they've had in the front seven. So when the Gophers start playing teams with better front sevens, it can get a little bit more heat on them. It'll be interesting. But I like the pocket throwing skill that we saw of him. He seems to like to attack the sidelines, and we got to see some of that. He also seems to like his big targets. And in the first half, Jamison Gears was on pace to have a 200 catch season. And then, like you said, in the second half, we got some dropsies out of him. Some of the other tight end dash fullback guys had drops. The receiving core had some, and we still have to figure that out, like I said, but a promising first performance, I think, from Drake Lindsey.
If you want to talk about the receivers or just pass catchers in general, Drake Lindsey completed a pass to 8 different people, including tight ends, wide receivers, running backs. To me, that's really encouraging because you know he's going through his progressions. Thor, I sit on the 20-yard line in the upper deck. You can actually see pretty easily a quarterback work through his progressions from there. It's one of the reasons why I love sitting in the upper deck, not just because I'm cheap. That's also another reason. But you do see a lot of the game from up top. I know you were up top in a suite with some Score Northers, thanks to donating to our Courage Kenny fundraiser. But I was encouraged by that. On the out routes, Thor, I'd love to get your more NFL combine scouting eye on this, or just a thought that I had. My only real negative takeaway. And to me, it's not even super negative. It's more just constructive criticism. And I think he'll get better at it. By the way, for those on YouTube, nice Oakland Raiders. Stein, what is that you just sipped out? Was that Oakland Raiders? What is that?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Shout out Cody Lindenberg making the 53-man roster with the Raiders. So that's for Cody.
Well, maybe that's a Thorfer's preview. I don't know. We'll get there. Okay. We'll get there shortly. But I've even kind of lost my train of thought here. What was I even saying, Thor? Remind me.
You were talking about the out routes, like a scouting note on them. Yeah.
A few of them looked just a split second late, and they looked like throws that Big Ten teams might pick off and take back to the house. However, I think the arm strength is clearly there. So some of that Thor, and I'll let you correct me, is that maybe just a processing arm strength thing? Or is that just something that will get better as he gets more cohesion with his receivers? Or am I an idiot and just not looking at it correctly? But I did think a few of those were slightly late and slightly dangerous. However, most of the time, the results worked out to be just fine.
I agree with you. I think I made a very similar point to Phil up there in the box during the game of like, there's a little bit of playing with fire as far as with the timing of it. And I think, that's a concept that they want in the playbook, because it not only can you get the completions out there when you get the right look, but it also opens up the middle of the field, which they like to attack in that offense as well. If you can prove to the defense, we will attack any inch of this field and you're going to have to defend it. Obviously that opens up more spacing in the intermediate. What he seems to have the arm for that throw to be able to bullet that ball out there and shade it towards the sideline. But I do think the timing of those, it wasn't picture perfect yet. And because of that, the margin for error was just a little bit less, to where I agreed with you. Like, it's like if you're playing Ohio State with the boundary corners that they have, you're going to be playing with fire with that if the timing of it hasn't improved. But he has the arm for it, which I think was sort of the encouraging thing. And then getting work in on it, and we just got to get better with the timing.
One thing I thought that happened during the game, and again, I'd love to get your opinion on this, I thought the offensive line got better as the game went on. They gave Lindsay more time to survey the field. I also think they got better in the run game. Darius Taylor, oh, by the way, just another nice game for him. 30 carries, 141 yards. I will say this, though, Thor, how much of that, and I think I know the answer here, but I love to pick your brain on these things. Some of that, to me, I'm not sure if that was the offensive line becoming more cohesive and coming together, or if that's just the product of being bigger, faster, and stronger than your opponent. Because, again, you could see that Buffalo was giving up a lot when it came to size, when it came to defensive line on offensive line. However, I will say this, even if that's true, they still went out and did their job and basically ran out the clock on Buffalo for the entire fourth quarter. So again, a lot of good there. And I thought it was good that they got better as the game went along. But I guess we talked about this last week, Thor. I'm going to need to see this for a handful of weeks before I can have any real formative opinions on the offensive line, if that's the word that I'm looking for. But I do think they were better at the end of the game than they were at the beginning of the game. And that's what you're hoping for when you play Buffalo or even a team like Northwestern State that we'll get to momentarily.
I agree with that. And the way that I saw the offensive line play, I guess similar to the way that I saw Lindsay's, where to me, I'm tentatively optimistic of what I saw. And you have to give the caveat that the opponent wasn't very good. And the front seven of that opponent is not very good. But what we didn't want to see, of course, is just like, oh no, this could be bad for once we get into Big Ten season. And the offensive line was at least promising. And like you said, when it was better, as the game went along, I thought in particular, the pass protection I thought was really strong. And that was kind of cool seeing both Lindsay getting comfortable in the pocket, but also a pocket for him to step up into and some pocket integrity for him to throw with. The run blocking we'll have to see. Buffalo, there was obviously stretches of that game where they were stacking the box, in particular the fourth quarter when you saw a bunch of those runs. You mentioned Taylor had 30 carries. Either it was either 14 or I think it was 14 of those carries came in the fourth quarter when they were icing the game away. Well, Buffalo, of course, was stacking the box during those. So some of those reps are a little bit harder to see. But I in particular like the pass blocking. The Gophers offensive line and Lindsay, they have another easier assignment next week against FCS Northwestern State. After that, things are going to start to get real, especially now that the Cal freshman quarterback, it turns out he's really good. Cal might be better than I thought that they were. So you're going to have some interesting tests after that. But yeah, tentatively optimistic about what we saw from that sort of new look Gopher offensive line.
Yeah, big picture, if you want to jump ahead a tiny bit to Cal, I didn't get to see much of that game. I did see a few minutes, and then I watched the highlights. I think we talked about this last week. I was a little bit more hesitant just giving that game to the Gophers. I'm slightly more hesitant now. My thought all along was in your path to 6 or 7 wins, get through non-conference at 2-1. If you get through non-conference at 3-0, even better. But if this team goes to Cal in 2 weeks and doesn't win, I'm not gonna tear down Dinkytown. I think that could be a really good lesson before you get your first Big Ten game. I will say this. We'll finish up on Buffalo here pretty quickly. Hat tip to Danny Collins, his first game as Gophers defensive coordinator. I thought the defense played great. Again, not super fair to figure out what they were playing against or what they weren't playing against. Really, the only big play of the game was, I don't want to call it a mistake by Kerry Brown, but he just got beaten one-on-one coverage on a, 40-yard pass for a touchdown by your guy, Victor Snow.
Yeah.
Victor Snow, great name for a football player. If you're going to play football and you're going to play for the University of Buffalo, Snow's a great name. And look, that stuff's going to happen. Kerry Brown's a great player. He's really good. So I'm not worried about that, but I thought the defense played exceptionally well.
For sure. Yeah. Most of that game was pretty dang near lights out. The most impressive thing was the best player on that Buffalo offense, as far as their skill guy, as far as the percentage of the offense, it's LJ Henderson, their running back. And Buffalo's running game should be pretty solid this year. The quarterback, Roberson, not a great thrower, as everyone saw, but he's a really, really good athlete. And the Gophers were able to basically force Buffalo to play left-handed by shutting out the lights on that running attack, more or less. And then it's Roberson throwing the ball. The play that you're talking about, you're close to midfield with Buffalo, and the Gophers had been moving guys up to address the running attack, which they did a really good job of. And on that play, Buffalo basically just got him on a play call is what it was, because you had 2 receivers on the right side going downtown, and the boundary cornerback took the boundary receiver, which left Victor Snow one-on-one with the deep safety, who came up. I think he got a little bit fooled. It wasn't really a fair situation for him, because to deal with a guy like Victor Snow in space all the way down the field that far, that is a tough assignment. And basically he tried to come up to meet Victor Snow, and Victor Snow sort of mimed that he was going to have a route break, and then just sort of veered off towards the end zone. And Kerry Brown, the feet kind of get tangled when you're coming up now. Oh no, and now he's going back towards the end zone to retreat, and obviously Snow got behind him. And Roberson, at that point, all you have to do is get the ball anywhere near the vicinity. Just throw up a lollipop, as long as it doesn't go out of bounds, it's a touchdown. But yeah, outside of that one play, which again, I don't put on the kid, that's more of a schematic thing. But if you're going to do this sort of schematic stuff that the Gophers were doing to shut out the lights on the run game, a clever play call like that can give the offense a shot. And obviously they got it there. But yeah, that was about all we saw from Buffalo's offense all game long. By the way, even after they got a freebie on the interception off the deflection, which was pretty crazy, that play within the 5-yard window where, and this is the one play where with Drake Lindsey, they're going to sit him down and be like, you can't do this, which was the receiver to the left. And he sort of looks over there, sort of telegraphs, I'm going to throw to this guy. The defender made a fabulously brilliant play, which is he mugged the dude down. I forgot who the receiver was, or the running back, or whoever was out there in the flat within the 5-yard window. But the defender shoves him over. Lindsay, he starts to get into the throwing motion, but the guy was already on the ground by before the ball leaves his hand. And I thought it was funny. Like he ends up throwing it to the guy where he is on the ground. It hits off his leg, goes up in the air. Buffalo receiver gets it. They end up chasing them down, so it's not a touchdown. Buffalo got deep into Minnesota's territory, but you hold them to a field goal there. Which freebie field goal, but for the defense to only hold the 3 there was very impressive as well. Very good showing by the Gophers defense.
Well, and I talked about this at the fair with Phil and Judd joined me for a bit before Manny hopped on. I can't remember who I made this point to, but again, it's something that doesn't really show up. But what a great play for your team. That was Darius Taylor who got back into the play and made that tackle. And I believe Buffalo ended up setting shop at the 25 or 30-yard line. To your point, only getting a field goal from what appeared to be and turned out to be, at least from looking at him for one game, a decent place kicker for Buffalo, who I believe made one of 2 field goals, barely missed his second one, which was longer, which leads me to my next point, Thor. Myself, as the special teams whisperer, is it too early to throw a parade for Brady Denneberg, who went 3 for 3? The third one, little ugly, but it split the uprights. Too early to throw a parade? I think it is.
It's too early to throw a parade, but it's not too early to tip the cap to Mr. Denneberg. He kicked better than we thought in that game. He answered the call. The one you're talking about was that really quick line drive he did. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That was like, whoa, like usually you don't see attempts made like that, but it went in. And so, after, when we were studying his body of work in our last episode, it was like, what are they getting themselves into here? But a good debut by that kid, and hopefully he keeps it up.
Those short field goals, again, you're always going to get about 2 minutes of special teams talk with me. So apologies if that offends you, people watching and listening. Those short field goals, especially in college football, are almost more of an adventure than a 50-yard field goal, because that is a steep angle when you're talking about inside 25 yards. It's why you see in the college game, way more than the NFL, you will see coaches, especially late in games sometimes, or I don't know, 4th and goal from the 5, and they know they're not going to go for it. You might see teams take delay of games just to make that a slightly easier field goal. So hat tip to Brady. Let's hope he's only kicking extra points this weekend when the Gophers take on Northwestern State, who I believe, Thor, did they fold the program for a few years before coming back last year? I believe they were inactive
for
a couple of years. Don't hold me to that, but I couldn't find anything for them past 2021. So I wonder if they folded after COVID. And sorry, Northwestern State fans, if you're listening and I'm completely wrong. I can tell you, Thor, they did go 0-12 in 2024, but they beat mighty Elkhorn State by a final score of 20-10 this last weekend. I don't say this in jest. Okay, I really don't. It's important to play. It's important to go through the process of playing. PJ's had some losses here that you really can't explain. I think about Bowling Green a few years ago. That's not going to happen this Saturday. That's not what I'm saying. But what realistically can the Gophers learn about themselves, Thor? Or what realistically can they do to feel like at the 2:30, 3 o'clock mark on Saturday, they got better as a football team by taking on Northwestern State and beating them?
Yeah, I mean, what I would want to do as a coach there is my veteran stalwart guys. You're not going to get a lot of action today. Darius Taylor didn't love how many touches he ended up getting in the last game. I know why ended up happening, because you gave him all those touches in the fourth quarter, but you were hoping that you had a bigger lead at that point and didn't have to do that. I think one way you can sort of give him the rest from that is, minimize the touches in this game. And a lot of the youth on the Gopher roster, I want to see that cycled in and getting an opportunity to get experience out there. And you can test out some of your play concepts there as well with some of these new guys. But this is a bad opponent, not just bad for the FBS, bad for the FCS. And maybe they're a bit better than they were last year. They beat Elkhorn, but this is one of those you can more or less roll the ball out. You know that you have a win. It's a quasi bye. So I want to use those reps to get some of my younger guys better, and I want to use the week to get my veterans some rest.
Yeah, exactly what I would have said. I said this on Friday at the fair. This is the type of game I want to see Darius Taylor get 15 carries for 85 yards, 2 touchdowns, and call it a day. Yeah. Maybe even less than that, because they're going to rely heavily on him later in the year. They already relied heavily on him to put away Buffalo. And I do think you're right. It's so easy to say this, but even against a bad FCS opponent, experience matters. And again, with it's not new, we'll call it newer redshirt rule, you can get some younger guys playing time and it won't count against you. So if you can do that for a handful of guys this Saturday, find a way to beat up on a team and win comfortably, I'm all for that, knowing that, let's say the Gophers go to Cal and win. Thor, I'm not convinced that will be an easy win. That's probably like a one-score game. So you're going to need guys and you're going to need to be healthy. So to me, that's one of the biggest things, too, about the Northwestern State game. Get out healthy. We don't need anybody who's going to play a major role on this football team as the season goes on getting injured. I know you can't play to not get injured. You really can't scheme for that. But let's just hope that Lady Luck is on the Gopher side and those playing don't suffer any real bad injuries. What do you know about Northwestern State? Can I put you on the spot? Do you know anything? Any draftable players on Northwestern State?
No, I don't think so. I mean, not that are in my database for sure. This is not North Dakota State, right? Like this is not a good FCS program. So yeah, there was no one that the NFL was looking at in the preseason. We'll see on Saturday, but yeah, that's a talent bereft roster that is sort of languished, at lower tier of the FCS for a while now. So. Yeah, not a good opponent. The only thing one of my good buddies who's now a professor at Marshall, he was a GA at Northwestern State for a couple of years when he was getting his grad degree. But that's about all I know of Northwestern State. I know it's in Louisiana. That's about it.
I just learned it was in Louisiana last week, so you were a step ahead of me there. I knew it wasn't near Chicago's Northwestern. I knew that, but I did not know. Natchitoches? Am I getting that right?
I think it's Nagadoches or something like that.
Nagadoches? Yeah. Nagadoches. Okay, well, whatever.
Something like that. Now people are going to be in the comments. I probably just butchered
Not going to play here anymore.
Not going to play here anymore. Yeah, we don't have to travel down there anyway. So, yeah, we're not returning the trip.
All right, Thorku. Well, here's what I know at Thorku on the X machine. I do know you're going to have a Thorfer for me, with this being week 1 in the NFL. Thorfer is going to be our bit where each week you highlight a Gopher who did well in the previous week during the NFL season. Well, we really haven't had much since the last time we did one. We maybe know some guys who are on rosters. You take this wherever you want. Give me one Gopher you want to highlight for this week's Thorfer.
I got to go Cody Lindenberg. Cody Lindenberg making the Raiders. Well done there. 7th round pick, obviously out of Minnesota. And the camp for Cody was a bit up and down, but they liked the developmental potential with Cody and his ability to play on special teams. And the linebackers don't have a great linebacking core. Funny enough, I believe it was yesterday, they signed Brian Asamoah to their practice squad. The Raiders did, but it's not a great linebacker room. So there is an opportunity if Cody keeps improving to eventually, get on the field pretty quickly there. He will be on the field on special teams, but potentially some opportunities for defensive snaps there as well. That's the thing. The Raiders like his potential. So they're giving him that roster spot because they want to keep developing him and hopefully they ended up getting something out of that. But it really well done by Cody Lindenberg figuring out a way to make that roster and we'll see what happens now.
If you go back a handful of years, Thor, and you would know this better than most, Cody was at one point projecting to be somebody who could go in the middle rounds of the NFL draft. It's at one point, I think I even saw him in the 2nd or 3rd round going back probably about 2 years. What changed that for him? Was it injuries? Was it the trajectory of the injuries that hurt him? And did a team like the Raiders get a mid-round guy with a value pick in the 7th round? I would say, I guess my short answer is they must be, because he made the roster. But what did change that for Cody? Was it truly just the injury factor for him as to why he slid so far down?
Yeah, it was the injury stuff, and then what manifested out of that. For instance, lost time on the field, but you had him over a couple different years, which deprived him of field time. And then when you went into your pre-draft process, he wasn't 100% at the outset. He wanted to play in Mobile in late January at the Senior Bowl, and he did, but he was not 100% during that. And then when he tested, he was getting closer, but I don't know that he was even 100% at that point, but it was important to him to go out and test. And he tested as a solid athlete, just off memory. I think he was high 70s or low 80s percentile as an athlete overall, but didn't run quite as fast as he was hoping. He was in the 4.7s. And so it was like that stuff. It was like during the college career, when you're on the field, when you're the big contributor, there was the multiple sort of nagging injuries and being off the field, and then that sort of lingering into his pre-draft process. And I don't know what different teams seen with his medicals, when during the combine, when they poke and prod you, you have all different teams' medical staffs looking into that. So I don't know where everybody was at with that, but that's what it was. A health concern, and then the amount of snaps that deprived from him. But to your point, yeah, I do think that they got him, the Raiders, on a sticker price discount. Because Cody Lindenberg, you have a guy who has an ideal NFL frame. He's absolutely an NFL caliber athlete as well, and very, very smart kid, gym rat type, who's always in there in the film room. Apparently, he was always in the Raiders building. He arrived there early before their rookie minicamp thing, and then I think I can say this. A lot of the other Raider guys, that like the rookies and whatnot, they were staying there for the rookie minicamp. A lot of them ended up going home before then you come back. Cody stayed there. Cody, he is a legitimate sicko for football, and it's one of those just want to get better. And it's one of those things where, like, other people are from the outside, or maybe even teammates. It's like, oh, teacher's pet or something. But the coaches, how much they love a young guy who just wants to be there, right? Just, I'll play in the parking lot, right? Like, or anyone that will come in here and watch film with me and teach me something. I'm all ears, right? And that's the kind of guy that Cody is. I think he ingratiated himself to the coaching staff and management this offseason because of that. And it helped him to overcome, apples to apples, Cody against this guy or Cody against that guy. There might have been a couple other guys that played a little bit better than him in the preseason games, but because of sort of the ball of clay that your evaluation that you are, in addition to the work ethic that you have already shown in your 4 months with the organization, it's clear as day to the Raiders, the management and the coaches, like, this kid wants it bad. This kid is going to improve every single day. So because of that, you end up winning that job. They are not willing to expose you to waivers. I thought that was interesting too. If the Raiders thought that they could have passed Cody on to the practice squad, you have to imagine that they would have given serious consideration to that. But they keep him on the roster for a reason, and I think a lot of that has to do with that. So good job, Cody Lindenberg.
If you're keeping score at home, we've now had 2 Thorfers. They have been a 7th round pick and a undrafted free agent, Max Brosmer, who makes the Minnesota Vikings roster, Cody Lindenberg, who makes the Las Vegas Raiders roster. Just for clarification, when I was calling them Oakland earlier, that's because I think that's what was on Thor's mug. That was not a misspeak on my part. Or does that say Las Vegas Raiders? I don't know what it says. I just assumed it was Oakland Raiders. Or does it just say Raiders?
It just says Raiders, I think.
Yeah. Maybe they knew they have a new home like every 7 years, so they just said, let's just not print the name on there.
That's probably a good call. Yeah.
So that's your Thorfer. I got 4 quick national talkers I want to whip through with you. If you like defense and you appreciate brand names in college football, then oh boy, was Ohio State and Texas a ton of fun for you. Here's the thing, Thor. In my mind, not a Picasso. They're not all Picassos. Not the greatest football game ever played. Definitely not the worst. It was just fun to see 2 brand names take on each other to start the year, and both now in the expanded college football playoff. One is slightly more hurt than the other, but losing that game for Texas does not preclude them or stop them from still making the college football playoff, which they, I don't want to say probably will, but they still have a great chance to. I thought it was a ton of fun, and I did think, in my opinion, Thor, it just looked like both teams' defenses were slightly ahead of the offenses. And by the way, both teams have killer athletes all over the field. Great athletes, especially for both teams, maybe even at this point, Thor, skew slightly more on the defensive side. So I had a ton of fun watching it.
Yeah, it was definitely a good game. And for, obviously Arch Manning is the people that, person that people are focusing on, but Texas was in that game until the end, right? I mean, that's just what it was. Obviously, you had the offensive struggles. The Ohio State defense played lights out. I love the scheming of Matt Patricia, and they were doing a lot of NFL stuff there against Arch, where you're changing the picture right after the snap. It's like, oh, we're in a cover 2 look here, and then they immediately bail to something else. Now it's man coverage. Now you're sending someone from a weird angle. Now they use Caleb Downs like this too, where they'll line him up in one spot. Now all of a sudden he's doing something different, or now you're rolling him back to replace someone in coverage who's coming up and blitzing. They were doing a lot of stuff to confuse Arch Manning, and Arch Manning. Boy, was he confused. But you have to give a lot of credit to Ohio State. The defenders on the field really good. They're able to do that because Ohio State has all kinds of speed at safety. And then you have arguably the best player in college football in Caleb Downs, that this do everything safety, that you can line up anywhere and he can do anything. So you had all that stuff going on. But yeah, I agree with you, Ross. It's not the best loss for Texas, but at the end of the season, a 7-point loss on the road to an Ohio State team that will assuredly be in the college football playoff. There are worse things that can happen. You could have lost by 14 to a team that went 3-9 last year, like Alabama did, for instance.
Also, if Texas goes 10-2 and doesn't even make it to the title game at 10-2, unless it's a really bad, crippling loss, Texas will make the college football playoff, assuming they only lose one more game. Segue Master, you've already unintentionally had one segue at the beginning of the show. You just did another one for me, Thor. Bigger winner this weekend. You had LSU defeat Clemson 17-10 on the road. Florida State borderline dominated Alabama at home 31-17. So not when it comes to the team, just as far as hot seat and overall perception. Bigger winner this weekend, Brian Kelly at LSU or Mike Norvell at Florida State? Who is more comfortable as we record this podcast?
Oh, Norvell, easily. Like, Norvell comes into the season on a white hot seat, and the temperature, it's like you douse that thing with cold water, right? I mean, now he's back to kind of sitting pretty. And depending on how the season goes, you can totally get people to forget about last year. The year before, they should have been in the playoff. They would have been if Jordan Travis hadn't snapped his ankle, and they probably should have been put in anyway, at least if it was just on resume, as the committee claims. Florida State was 13-0 during that regular season. Last year was what it was, but you bounce right back. You dominate Alabama, like you were mentioning, and now Florida State, you're in this ACC that is not very good. And so if Florida State, I'm not saying they're back or they're for real or anything, but like, even with just a solid team in the ACC, you can start doing some damage. And they got that Alabama win in their pocket. So it's definitely Mike Norvell. The LSU thing, to me, that was more, you have established yourself as a legitimate national title contender when we didn't think they were before. And it's because of the defense. LSU defense was way, way, way better than we have seen the past couple of years. If LSU has a good defense, by definition, they are a national title contender because you have a first-round quarterback calling the shots for you back there in Garrett Nussmeier. So if you have a healthy Nussmeier and your defense back, that team is going to be a tough out for anyone, and we will see them make a college football playoff run.
Let me now flip this. Who was the bigger loser, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama or Dabo at Clemson? In my opinion, Thor, the heat's going to turn up on DeBoer, but I actually, more than it already is, I actually think that it's Dabo, because all we've been told about is that Clemson could be a national championship contender. And oh, by the way, Clemson has had, I don't want to call it atrocious offense the last handful of years, but just not very good. I mean, in all honesty, average offense at best. Now, they may have been playing the best defense in college football. We'll find that out as the season goes on. But to be leading fairly early and have that performance at home, I don't think they're going to run Dabo out anytime soon, but I definitely think he's trending towards being the most uncomfortable he's been at Clemson since he's been there, because it's really tough to say that a program that's won national championships has become stagnant and irrelevant, But for everything you just said about the ACC, if Clemson loses one more game, they might be okay. Probably still have a chance to get in, especially if they win the conference. If Clemson loses two more games, they're cooked. And that's where I think he could start to be in a lot of trouble, because they do think they should win national championships every year. And look, they're probably right. And maybe a part of what's hurting Dabo, they did it a little bit more this year than they have in the past. But what was the stat last year, Thor? Heading into like the bowl game or the final week of the season, the only three teams that had not taken transfer portal players were Army, Navy, and Clemson. I mean, that's incredible if you think about it in this day and age in college football. And by the way, I really like Dabo. I always have. I think he's entertaining. I think he's largely good for college football. But it's weird to say that a team that wins 8 to 10 games every year has kind of become stale. But it just doesn't seem like there's the upside to win a national championship there anymore.
Yeah, Dabo Swinney, it took him a little bit to get around to the evolution of college football. And, you know, I forget what the saying is, but you're forced to adapt or you die, right? And Dabo Swinney was quickly starting to look like a dinosaur. And he basically didn't have a choice. They would have run him out if he had not started to go into the transfer portal, because you had quickly lost ground to teams like Florida State the year before that put together a team out of the transfer portal. And then some of these other ACC teams. Hell, we've seen SMU come up from the AAC up to the ACC last year, make the college football playoff with a team that had gone out and gotten some good guys in the transfer portal as well. To compete in modern college football at the FBS level, you don't have a choice. Doesn't matter. Like, even if you recruit pretty well out of high school, like Clemson does, you didn't have a choice but to dip in there. And then the other thing was, Dabo used to do the thing with his coaching staff of like, you know, all you guys, you start out at the bottom and then you kind of work your way up. And then when a coordinator leaves, we replace internally. And then it just sort of starts the process again. His offensive and defensive coordinators a couple of years ago were not good. They were guys that had just been sort of promoted up, and now they're both gonzo. And Dabo has gone out and gotten high profile coordinators on both sides of the ball. Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator, he led TCU to the national title a couple of years ago. Max Dugan on that team, very impressive year for Garrett Riley that year. Last season, they had done better. Garrett Riley's first year wasn't great with Clemson's offense. You're sort of figuring that out. Last year, that offense got good. I was not impressed with Garrett Riley's play calling against LSU. And that's really where I put the thing back on, because it's like you do your prep and you're sort of prepping for a mediocre LSU defense. I mean, that's what we've seen the last couple of years. And you know a lot of the players that are back and where they've been playing and whatnot. And all of a sudden you get out there and it's like, oh, this defense better than we thought. And the adjustments just that I thought were coming weren't. You know, it's like at the beginning of the game was when Clemson's offense was doing the best. And then like LSU's defense, it just kept cutting off the oxygen. And in particular, the run game. Clemson couldn't run at all, and it put all the pressure on Cade Klubnik. He makes a couple mistakes, overthrows a guy, goes right into the chest plate of the safety behind him, flipping the field. LSU getting the interception. But I have to go with DeBoer as the answer to the question. That was a long windup to go back with DeBoer. DeBoer might get fired this year. What a pathetic performance. You both were not prepared, but then watching back Florida State's offense and the lack of effort pursuing the ball and tackling on the Alabama defense was incredible. I have not seen an Alabama defense loafing like that. And this was in like a huge spot, right? It's like this primetime opening game. You're on the road. I know Florida State wasn't great last year, but that's a good environment to play in. And they were devoid of energy. And it also seemed to be devoid of a plan. Kalen DeBoer, he seems to be devoid of a plan. I didn't understand why, Ty Simpson, the quarterback that they're starting, we've seen Ty Simpson in the past. He couldn't beat out all the quarterbacks they had there. With Saban the last couple, they tried to start him. It didn't work. Like, he's not a great quarterback. I didn't understand if that's a scenario and you're DeBoer, and last year, some people think you could have done a little bit better, but you had a bad fit at quarterback in Jalen Milroe. Now you get Jalen Milroe out of there. Great. The world is open to you. We were just talking about the NIL portal era. This is your time, my man, Kalen DeBoer, offensive genius, to either, Ty Simpson, who has never worked before. I'm so smart, I can get that guy to run a high-powered offense, or to go out and shop for a quarterback. Ty Simpson isn't it, and that is on Kalen DeBoer, both lack of development, but also, again, you had that opportunity to go out and shop for his replacement, and you didn't do it. The other quarterback, Kalen DeBoer, he brought one with him from Washington, Austin Mack. That kid's on a milk carton. So that's the last guy that Kalen DeBoer is like, oh, that guy, right? And then you have a five-star true freshman. Keelan Russell is the other guy back there. I think they're going to have to go to Keelan Russell in 3 or 4 weeks to save to extend Kalen DeBoer a little bit. But you get to the end of the season, if that Alabama team is 7-5 or 6-6, bye-bye, my man. Like they will come up with the money to get rid of him. Kalen DeBoer needs to figure out something quick. I'm usually not the knee-jerk reaction guy, but there are instances in the second year where I've been like, this one is going to end bad and it might end quick. Another one, you go back to Florida State, Willie Taggart. Remember Willie Taggart's second season? And he comes in, and in the September, they're getting their brains blown out. And it's like, oh, they're beaten in. I'm sorry. Where it's like, this could be bad. Like, we usually don't see the high-power program fire a coach the second season. DeBoer, you got to turn this thing around, man. It was not good what we saw on Saturday.
I can see him being out if they're 1-3 at like the end of September, or what you said. We're talking about an Alabama team that's barely bowl eligible. I think if he gets to 8, probably 9 wins, he'll start next year on a red hot seat. The Alabama thing to me is interesting because I think he was probably the best available to them. So if you're going to get rid of him, where do you go again? Because to me, you're spinning the wheel of coaches again. You're not going to get Dabo. I mean, maybe if Clemson moves on from him, but would Alabama really make the move to bring somebody who just got told to go away? You're not going to get Kirby Smart from Georgia. So I just think and I'm not saying you stand pat just to stand pat, because I've always said, look, sometimes it is time to make a change. And then you're asked, well, who are you going to get that's better? And my reply has always been, I don't know. I'm not the athletic director. It's not my job to go out and find who's better. But I can tell you what you currently have isn't working. Yeah, who do you got?
Now this one, it's this guy turned him down last time. At least as far as we know, they did reach out to him, and he was not interested in going after it last time. I think this time he would listen. Steve Sarkisian, especially if things don't, this year at Texas, and now people are starting to complain. And why weren't you better with Arch? And why weren't you better when you had Quinn Ewers and yada yada? He might be willing to pick up that phone. Sarkisian, he had a lot of loyalty towards Texas because Texas was the first, program that sort of took the chance on Sarkisian post the issues that Sarkisian had USC, Washington, the alcoholism and stuff like that threatened to end his coaching career. Of course, the coach that really turned it around for him was Nick Saban. You bring in Steve Sarkisian, he was the offensive analyst, and then he became the offensive coordinator at Alabama. And all of a sudden he had turned his stock around, and he's sort of been shined off by the Nick Saban, car wash with that. Then he goes to Texas. But if Nick Saban comes a calling now, right, and boy, do we need you now. And Sarkisian doesn't like the way that the Texas fan base this year is responding to his team and some of this different stuff. That's where I could see Sarkisian picking up the phone. And some people out there, you might be like, well, you just turned the thing down just a little over a year ago. Why would he do it now? I'll bring you back to Ross. You remember Jeff Brom when the first time with the job with Louisville? Louisville had called Jeff Brom, who had been the Purdue coach or whatever. It was 2 years before he ended up taking the job. I forgot the coach that they had there before, but anyway, Jeff Brom turned him down the first time to stay at Purdue. Jeff Brom did a really good job at Purdue, but then 2 years later at the Louisville job, it opens back up. And they call Jeff Brom, and you're able to get it done then. And I think that for Jeff Brom, what was important is like the public perception with Purdue is like, I'm not leaving right away. I didn't just come here to spend a couple years here, and now I'm going to jump. But after you had done it once and been like, done the Leo DiCaprio, like, I'm not leaving. And then you stay a couple more years at Purdue. Nobody at Purdue blamed him then when he ultimately went back home to his alma mater. After you turned him down a couple years before, now he accepts it. Nobody was mad at him. I think it would be a similar thing with Steve Sarkisian if he got the call from Alabama. Let's say that Kalen DeBoer is fired later this fall, which, again, a long way to go. It's just one game. But let's just say worst case scenario, and Alabama's staring 6-6 or 7-5 down the barrel. They end up pulling the plug on Kalen DeBoer. I have to think Steve Sarkisian would at least listen this time.
Well, also, Thor, I think it's just typical. I don't want to say logic, but it's just human psychology. and we've heard it in sports, it's not easy to be Brian Greasy replacing John Elway. It's also going to be easier for Sark, if this was to happen, to replace Kalen DeBoer, who underachieved in 2 years, versus immediately replacing Nick Saban. Just makes it a little bit.
Great point.
Just makes it a little bit more enticing, and maybe you get a bit more of a leash if you start off only 9-3 in year one, where DeBoer did that and immediately, at least, is maybe not for the administration, at least what they tell you, but as far as the fans, immediately on the hot seat. Two very quick ones with you, or for you to close. Bigger upset over the weekend. The beauty of college football, we always have some great upsets that you're really not necessarily paying attention to. We talked about LSU beating Clemson, not really an upset, but a good game. Florida State beating Alabama. Maybe we'll find out the end of the year, not really an upset, but you maybe didn't really see it coming. Austin P over Middle Tennessee, 34-14. Something called Tarleton State over Army, 30-27 in overtime. I watched way too much of that game. Or South Florida absolutely throttling number 25 Boise State, 34-7. Bigger upset amongst those three games, Thor.
The answer is probably Tarleton, just sort of in the vacuum. Army wins double-digit games the year before, so in terms of that, but I would have to say South Florida, because much higher profile game, and Boise State has been the G5 bully on the block for years and years and years, and what an opportunity for South Florida to catch them in the first game post Ash and Genty. But not just that, they didn't sneak up on them. They beat the ever-loving you-know-what out of Boise State. That was a throttling. What a shocking box score. Like you mentioned before on Thursday night, was with Phil. You come from the fair, then you're at the Gopher game. And so I wasn't and hanging out with anyone listening that was with us in the box that night. Hello. That was super duper fun, hanging out with all the score listeners and everything. But because I wasn't seeing some of the other scores like in the college football universe in the moment, I came home and opened up that box score. I was like, oh my God. Like, what did I miss here? And, was able to go back and watch some of the highlights. Byron Brown, the quarterback from USF, looked great. And Boise State, man, you got to pick up the pieces. You don't have a generational talent to just be the whole team anymore. So they're going to have to figure something out. The quarterback last year that was sort of protected by Genty, now you're going to have to – the offense is going to need to be led by the foot of Maddox Madsen, the quarterback of Boise State. But USF, that is a dangerous team. And you want to talk about coaches that are candidates to jump up to a bigger job. Alex Golish, the USF coach, you got to put him right near the top of the list if they keep playing even close to as good as they did there. Alex Golish turned South Florida around 2 years ago. They were a surprise bowl team his first season. Alex Golish he previously was the offensive coordinator for Josh Heupel at Tennessee. Alex Golish knows offense. Last year, they took a step back because Byron Brown, the quarterback who started against Boise State, he was nicked up all season, in and out of the lineup. Then when he was playing, he wasn't 100%. It was back and forth, stop and start. But Byron Brown, clearly 100%, and he ran roughshod over that Boise State team. When USF gets going, you have the athletic quarterback who can also throw down the field a little bit, and then they run the hyper tempo. You have problems if you can't stop their running game. They'll just get you back on the heels, and now it's a track meet the entire game. They wore Boise State down as well, but they beat them in a phone booth. Very impressed by South Florida and Boise State. You got to pick up the pieces in order to come back here and make a bowl, because that did not look like a very good team last Thursday night.
Another guy who I think quietly probably needs a really nice follow-up season to, being better last year, if my memory serves me correct, is my guy, only because I love his name, Brent Venables at Oklahoma. Oklahoma takes on Michigan this weekend. That's probably the game I'm most excited to keep tabs on and watch. It's not the sexiest slate here in week 2 if you scan the games that are upcoming. But I got a feeling there's a game up north in the Midwest that you're probably paying attention to, even though this is a Gophers pod. And I'll tell you, I'm also paying attention to it largely because I want that team wearing black and gold to lose. Only because, not because I'm not really, people are going to get mad at me. I'm not really anti-Iowa. I prefer that they don't win, but I'm not anti-Iowa. I'm anti-Wisconsin over anything, right? Better dead than red.
Sure.
The only reason why I need Iowa to lose a few games is if you're attempting to watch the Gophers at Kinnick this year and you haven't bought a ticket yet, the prices are astronomical. So I could use a few Iowa losses for people to start selling their tickets a little bit. But I got a pretty good idea without totally stealing your thunder, what you're looking forward to watching this weekend.
Yeah, it's a Cyhawk game, 11 a.m. kickoff on Saturday. It's the big noon game on Fox there, but Iowa State, very close spread in that, which it always is. That's a game that can, every single year, it's a close game. You come in with the spreads very close, and it doesn't really seem to matter who has home field advantage in that one either. I mean, last year was in Kinnick when Iowa State went in and stole that one, a game that Iowa had mostly controlled to that point. Iowa State storms back. So we'll see. But it has some pretty fascinating individual matchups as well. Both teams look solid. Right, Iowa State started out 2-0. You beat Kansas State that opening game in Ireland. Iowa, they haven't played anyone yet. They played the FCS team last week. So I'll be interested to see what we get out of Iowa. But the trench play is always really good in that game. And the one that I'm looking forward to, and Vikings fans, since we're on a Minnesota podcast, should be interested in both these guys. Logan Jones, the center for Iowa, is, I believe, the best center in the nation. If not, other, top two, if nothing else. And then on the other side, Dominic Orange, the Iowa State interior defensive lineman, nose tackle, big citrus, we call him. That matchup is one of the best NFL draft individual one-on-one prospect matchups that we're going to see in college football this coming week. And it's pretty fascinating because Dominic Orange, his whole game is power, and Logan Jones' whole game is ridiculous athleticism for an interior player. So it's going to be sort of interesting. These guys are sort of contrasting styles, who ends up winning there. But yeah, just overall a really good matchup, and it's always a spirited affair there. The whole state of Iowa shows up. I was looking at Airbnbs the last couple of days, because we're obviously going to be staying the night before, and a lot of people are going to be staying around there. The Airbnbs and the VRBOs it's getting sparse out there. But yeah, looking forward to seeing that game on Saturday.
I just want to go back. Big citrus is great. I think you also used the word bereft in this podcast. Not only is your football knowledge deep, your vocabulary and nickname knowledge very deep as well, Thor. That is greatly appreciated from yours truly, and I hope the masses.
My man, I hope so. Yeah, and we'll have boots on the ground. We'll keep taking a look at these prospects this fall.
We'll catch up middle of next week. Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right, that is Thor Nystrom, a.k.a. Thorku on the X Machine. I'm at the Ross Brendel. This has been another award-winning edition of Gophers 101.